think this is off. Pushed it, but it didn't do anything. Okay, I've been asked to lead this part of the meeting. This is a public hearing for the proposed ordinance changes. And so I think the logical thing to do would be to take it article by article. And I assume that we're all going to be in favor. There won't be much discussion about choosing a moderator to preside at the special town meeting, which is scheduled to take place on March 3rd at 5:30 here at the fire station. So let's delve into Article 2. Darlene, if you would be so kind as to give us may I ask for a brief synopsis of the change and what the planning board has in mind as the reason for its change.
Okay, so that's the first one that you're talking about?
Article 3.
Article 2.
No, Article 2, I'm sorry.
The articles
They're
aren't
not
on their
numbered.
copies. We're going to go off the ordinance changes. So the first one is the application submittal deadlines.
Okay, so, gotcha. So, page 1 of the handout that Carly had, she's numbered the bottom of the pages for us, has to do with application submittal deadlines. Basically, so all of these, if text is stricken out, it's to be deleted. If it's underlined, it is to be added to the ordinance. And then all of the black is just what's there already. So in 3 different sections in the ordinance, we're changing the submittal date for an applicant from 12 days to 15 days. So in order to get on the agenda with an application, you have to come to the town, submit 15 days ahead of time instead of 12 days ahead of time. That change was to allow for us to have enough time to do the required advertising for a hearing for an application, which doesn't happen every time. The deal is that if you're doing a hearing before an application, the notification has to be in the paper 11 days before the meeting, and if someone's bringing in an application at the end of the day on the 12th day before the meeting, there's like 0 time to look at it. So we had that changed back to 15. It's just a quick administrative type thing, and that's all that is. It doesn't change anything else in those sections.
Is there any comment on that from the public?
Do the normal rules about weekends and holidays apply?
Yeah.
Or is this straight 15 days no matter what?
Right, it's a straight 15 days.
Calendar
It's not-
days.
It's their calendar days, not
Okay.
working days.
So
Yeah,
weekends and holidays are irrelevant.
right,
Correct.
right. So, yeah, our meeting is on a Tuesday, so it has to be in like the 2 Mondays before that, I think is what it works out to be.
Is there any other comment? Okay. Now, we're on to,
I should note for the record, if anyone has any questions, please introduce yourself. That was Barry Kempson. He is one of our remaining members of the Board of Appeals. So he was one of the members that reviewed ordinance changes previously.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mary.
Thank you for doing that.
And the next article is Article 4? Is that final plan for some? 3.
We're on 3 for
Oh,
butter
3.
notification.
Oh, all right, I'm confused. Tell me what I'm doing.
We're on page 3.
Of this, yes. All right. All right. So, Article 3. And which one? Shall an ordinance entitled 2022 Amendments to the Land Use and Development Review Ordinances regarding abutter notification be enacted? There.
I can speak to that if you'd like.
Sure?
So that is page 3 of the handout that you have. Abutter notifications need to be done a certain way by state statute. And we were hoping, well, the whole idea is to make sure that the abutter notifications are being sent by town staff to addresses based on the town tax maps. Previously, there's a bunch of different sections that refer to how a person is notified. They weren't consistent, they all kind of conflicted each other. Some said that it just had to be mailed, others said that it had to be sent. It wasn't consistent, and it didn't say anything about doing certified mail. So to make it easier and consistent and trackable, we changed it to being certified return receipt, and the fact that the town office comes up with the list and administers that to make sure that it goes out to the right addresses and that the tracking is a little bit easier. There's 2 pages here, front and back, only because there are 5 different instances where it's referred to in the ordinance in different sections. And that was really to make it consistent.
Public comment. Any further questions on that? Looks like we're ready to go to Article 4, which is on page 5. Shall an ordinance entitled 2022 Amendments to the Land Use and Development Review Ordinances regarding signage be enacted? Is there comment on that?
I can go ahead and explain it if you like.
Yes, please.
So the commercial, business and home occupation standards for sign sizes and such has been a problem for quite a while. Code enforcement officer asked that we take a look at it. What we've done is increase the size, the square footage of the signs from 15 to 25 square feet in area. And there's also a clause in here in that first paragraph stating that all existing signs that are non-conforming on April 1st, 2022 at businesses that are operational and accepting clients as of that date shall be allowed to remain until that business ceases operations or is no longer physically present at the location. All business signage installed after April 1st, 2022 shall conform to the requirements of this subsection 6. So if there's a sign out there now that is more than 25 square feet in area, it's what most people would consider grandfathered. If the business ceases, then the sign has to come down and the new business has to have a sign that conforms to the 25 feet. It was 15 feet before, it just seemed small, especially in certain areas. We have the urban development park where it's more industrial, so we made that change. If you look on the back page, it's just again changing 15 feet to 25 feet in 3 different places, business and commercial signs. The other thing it did is change the home occupation standard sign. It used to be 1 square foot that you could have like on your mailbox or somewhere out front, which seemed really small. We changed that to 3 square feet, so it's a little bit bigger. It's still, you know, not huge, obnoxious in the middle of some residential neighborhoods. We just felt that that was appropriate to do that.
Is there any comment from the public on that signage change proposed? There being none, Article 5, shall an ordinance entitled 2022 Amendments to the Development Review Ordinance regarding commercial lighting be enacted? And Darlene, would you like to speak to those?
Sure. So if you look, we've crossed out item C in the list under the lighting design standards. So this comes out of the commercial site review standards for new businesses that come to town. They have to have certain lighting standards. The main goal is to keep the lights from shining on the neighbors, really, and any oncoming traffic, that sort of thing. C has been crossed out because reads very, very close to another one in the list, which I think, yeah, so C read like the original G. So we crossed it out. And then what happens is all the other ones have to be relabeled, different letters. We did a couple of things on D, added a word and or protected as to avoid being damaged by vehicles easily. The word easily seemed a little subjective. And then on the very last one, which was I and is now H, reads all exterior lighting shall be designed to, and we added not exceed 0.05 lumen within 10 feet of neighboring residential properties. So you take a reader and you go 10 feet from the property line, and it has to be 0.05 or less to keep lights out of people's homes and yards.
Is there any public comment on Article 5?
The Board of Appeals did review this and question why C was removed, which I think Darlene has answered appropriately.
Yeah, it just reads the same as the second to last one and seemed confusing.
Moving on to Article 6. Shall an ordinance entitled 2022 Amendments to the Land Use Ordinance regarding lot coverage and frontage standards for business, commercial, and non-residential uses be enacted? Is there public comment on this proposal?
Would you like me to talk to that one, Madeline?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So this section is in the business, commercial, non-residential use standards. It has to do with lot coverage. It wasn't specifically labeled lot coverage, we put lot coverage on top of it. There was just one paragraph. We added a second paragraph. The reason for this is that originally it just said business and commercial. And we now have the urban development park zone, which we've had for a while. And now we have an owner who's starting to develop it, which is nice. So we looked at the lot coverage allowances. And personally, I've always thought that in the business and commercial, the 40% lot coverage development was low. So that means pavement and buildings, that if you have a 1 acre lot, you can only put pavement and buildings on 40% of it, is the way this reads. So we decided to, one, expand on the business and commercial a little bit. Well, we didn't expand it. We added the word coverage. We changed impermeable to impervious. It's impervious ground. Pavement is impervious. And then there was a typo, I think, said that the setback shall be increased to 53 feet. That was definitely a typo of 35. So we fixed that for the business and commercial. We copied it and created one for the urban development park, which reads incredibly similar, except for the business and commercial states that your coverage shall not exceed 40% unless the planning board approves an increase up to a maximum of 60%. In the urban development park, which is more industrial, not near residential uses like the rest of the business and commercial in town, that has been changed to, increase could be up to a maximum of 75%, provided that the lot, I'm gonna start over. So lot coverage shall not exceed 60%, but can be increased by the planning board up to 75%. So business and commercial is 40% with an increase up to 60, and the urban development park is 60% with an increase up to 75%. The 75% can only be provided if the lot is large enough for the width of all vegetative buffer strips to be increased to 30 feet, and that all setbacks are increased to 50 feet from the property line of an adjacent residential lot or a commercial lot with a residential use. So if you're doing something in the urban development park up against a residential lot next to it, you have to have more of a setback. It
Is
seems,
this something new? Is this something the selectmen approved?
We did. When?
I
that in a meeting,
We
and
did it in
you
a
had
meeting
it.
2 meetings ago.
This has not been presented to the selectmen.
Oh, I thought it was.
No. This is the
You
first
may
time
have
I've
reviewed
seen.
it in email with the attorney, but this was not presented at a selectmen's meeting. The only changes that were presented were to the UDP zone specifically.
Right, for the skip.
The principal uses were presented.
Right, I sent it to Christine, I did not come to you, I thought it was forwarded around because it went in an email to you and to Christine, so you have it in an
We
email.
may have it, but I don't remember us discussing it.
They were given it at
Okay.
the last meeting where we talked about it, but it wasn't presented in the same way that the other changes were presented.
Right, because it was done after that.
Well, then we haven't had adequate time to discuss this.
Derek, you submitted some concerns about this particular proposed change. Did you want to speak to that?
So, yes, thank you. Derek Dudzik, my wife Kathleen, we own the industrial park currently. You know, and my concerns really fall back on, the plans that go with the industrial park. When we purchased the industrial park from the town of West Bath, the plans that came with it, in these plans, sightlines, the town paid sightlines, $150,000 to make these plans. And at some point, maybe it's not going to be tonight, obviously, but I'd like to go before the planning board. I'd like to have the planning board acknowledge these plans. I'd like to have them put that in public record, so I can copy that, and in 5 years, when I have to go before the planning board, again, I can have this information and have a reference to these plans, because currently, I don't know if the planning board recognizes these plans. It sounds like when the plans were done and the park was built, it sounds like the ordinances never caught up with it. So I think, if I'm correct, Darlene's, what the board has done anyway, I shouldn't say Darlene, but what the planning board is trying to do is trying to catch up to what's been included in these plans. Am I right? Am I close even there? Because
I
because
do
right
not
now,
know what you have specifically laid out in your plans that would supersede the ordinance.
well,
So
it does-
what we were doing with expanding this,
Mhm.
knowing that you are developing the urban, and the urban development park is more than Wing Farm. So Wing Farm only covers like a third of it. So for the whole urban development park, we were looking at it as, this is an industrial area, this needs to be developed larger than our regular business and commercial.
Right.
Everything business and commercial really in town is intermingled with residential homes.
Right.
So it made sense to leave the lot coverage for the business and commercial where it was, and in turn, it made sense to expand the lot coverage for the urban development park.
Sure.
So it was put forth there to help with your development and the development of all the lots up there in the urban development park.
That's great.
Whether, I have not taken the time to go into the town and to study those plans. I do not know what they say or don't say. I do not know if legally they can supersede what is in our ordinance that we have to follow. That's a question for the town legal staff. This was done, honestly, at the 11th hour, when we had our deadline to get our stuff to this meeting, and that's why it wasn't at yours, to alleviate this problem so that you would be able to develop the urban development park more than what the ordinance now says you can do.
And so now I understand that part of it. So I don't necessarily have a problem with this language here, that's in here and so forth now. Again, I'm just going to ask that the board accepts these plans and we can reference these plans moving forward. Every time
I
we go
just
to the
need to
planning
say,
board.
I have a problem seeing this tonight because we are asked to give things to one another in a timely fashion for people to explore, and I feel like, again, the Board of Selectmen have not been given that opportunity.
You might consider, in order to give a little more time to review it, you might consider having it on the May warrant instead of doing it on the special town meeting warrant. that would give us a little bit of time for Darlene to come in and review what we have. Get more information if we don't have it on file.
And I honestly think it's a determination at this point, knowing what I know for legal, not for the planning board so much, because the claim is that the town sold them land with stipulations that supersedes what the ordinance says, and I don't know how legal that is.
So
I think we have more homework
I
to
do
do.
too.
There were no, as far from my recollection of the sale of the land, there were no stipulations included in the sale that were not included in the original plan for the wind farm industrial development.
But I don't think a sale of land can put on it provisions that supersede the land ordinance provisions, I guess is my point. And that's a question
So,
for
well,
Sally.
so here, I've spent some time looking into the detail of the drawings that were sold as part of the package. And each of the lots has a building envelope established per lot based upon square footage of the lot. The change here in the urban development lot coverage, going from, it was already up to 60% I'll say in business and commercial. It was already up to 60% with a planning board extension and approval. In looking at some of the details with Derek, we went through all the lots. Not one lot that he has in the Wing Farm plans exceeds 60%, which in theory is the capacity of business and commercial as it stands today. And that's why I think he's brought the plans here. The opportunity to extend the additional 15% beyond what the capacity is for business and commercial provides more parking, more things that's going to be in an industrial area that may require a larger footprint of a building space. But he's still at the capacity right now of those plans that were sent to him through, I believe, the federal, state, and local government, if I looked at all the signatures and approvals there. And so he's still not going to be exceeding the 60% based upon what is allowed even in business and commercial.
All the same,
Right, this
The
is
select-
the board of selectmen,
the
not
select-
the board of Suzanne and Mr. Dudley.
No, I went to review, there were questions about it.
Again, it's a board of selectmen. If you're going and reviewing, and we're not part of that, it's not a board of selectmen.
I didn't do it as a selectman. I also sit with the planning board.
So I apologize if the selectmen did not get this. We did, the planning board, Jerry can vouch for this, we did this like the last night that we could do anything to do ordinance changes. And I wrote it up that night so that we could make sure that anything in the urban development part could go above and beyond the 60% because of the time frame and the reason why we're having a special town meeting. I sent it, and I did email it to all four of you. I apologize for not making a schedule to come to a meeting to discuss it. I assumed if that was necessary, someone would have asked. So I apologize for that. But it was at the very end, at the very last minute,
I don't,
to get under the wire.
I don't see what the urgency is, and I don't see why this can't wait until the regular town meeting in May. This is not an emergency, and we have not had sufficient time to discuss this as a board.
I'd just like to point out as a matter of record, Suzanne is the select board liaison to the planning board.
Right. It's the
Right, representing the select board.
It's as a representative of the select board as we go. We can't make promises when
I
they're
just want-
there.
No promises were
No,
made.
not
No promises
arguing,
were made.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I'd like to be a little more clear about this. So, number one, no promises were made here. And the other part of this is, we're not asking to do anything that's outside the parameters of these plans that were sold to us with the industrial park. These plans were DEP approved, the the town approved them, everyone approved these plans, and the town paid for these plans. When we purchased the property from the town of West Bath, the town administrator at the time handed me these plans with a big grin and said, go for it, this is great news. The previous code officer had no problem with anything we were doing over there, and the current code officer has no problem with what we're doing over there. We're not asking for anything more than what's on these plans.
Right.
We just want to be able to make sure that we can build what is on these plans. And currently, my understanding is the current ordinance doesn't allow that. Without approval, you actually have to approve.
If it's a lot coverage problem.
Right.
And looking at your lots, they look like that building envelope is more than 60% in some of those lots. And so, we can get into it, maybe we don't wanna get into it now,
Sure.
but your definition and what you think of as a building envelope, or what someone has told you, I think is very different than what it is, but I haven't studied all those.
It says
To
on here what
verify
the
it.
building area is.
Okay,
Literally
so-
says
So,
it.
we'll maybe table it for another.
And again, we
Yeah,
want to work with you,
Sure.
yeah,
but we
it's
want to do
not
it
trying
right
to be
and not
difficult.
end up in legal battles down the road.
Mhm.
And there's been no time to study this. We've had been able to reach out to our legal. And it just feels like there's a rush for something that we may, I'm sure you don't want any more legal fees either. I think we just want to.
No, we just want to be able to do what was sold to us.
Exactly.
Right.
So I want to be clear about that. The town has themselves, I feel like, in a kind of a funny spot, because we purchased this for the town, all of this. None of this was Derek and Kathleen.
Right.
This was all done before Derek and Kathleen. So,
It's all done before any of us sitting
Right.
in this
sure,
way.
sure.
So if we can, as a room, everybody in this room agree, it's gonna be much easier than a pocket here doing this, a pocket there doing that, a pocket, and then we keep coming back. It would be nice if
So how
everybody
does
was
this-
working together.
How do we move forward on this?
I think we do have to review this. I think we do have to put it on the May town meeting.
And what, in the meantime, would be appropriate to my mind, would be that we would have it presented as an ordinance change, that finally, we could have you come and you explain what it is that you bought, so that everybody knows what is in that pile of information. I mean, boxes and boxes and boxes of information, duplicates of stuff that's in those boxes, never curated. So we need to know what that is, and you need to be free to do what it is that needs to be done in the industrial park, the only one we've got. So it's got to be cleared up. These questions just keep coming up, and they serve no real purpose to my mind.
I agree. I feel like some of this is, I feel like we're a casualty of the previous planning board not having this wordage in there. You know, I don't know how this was ever accepted and brought to this state, and here we are, trying to decide this 12 years later, after
Well,
2 buildings are on.
You're careful though, because the planning board can't just change wordage, it takes a process, and we've gone through process before a whole year of trying to change wordage and then being stopped right before the meeting.
Sure.
So it's not a planning board problem.
I'm not blaming
And
this
the planning
current-
board had nothing to do with any of the language in your sale and agreement that you had either.
Okay.
You know, if someone who
We
didn't.
can't
I feel-
replace
yeah.
lane, we as a
Yeah,
town
and-
need to get
We
together.
need to figure out how to make it work,
Yeah.
and that's,
Yeah, and-
David?
I would ask the board to clarify with our legal how this plays out, because this was passed at a town meeting, voted on by the townspeople,
Right.
so which is the ruling ordinance? This one was passed in its plans, or the past ordinance, because it's
Right.
an interesting question, which supersedes the other one?
but it, because it, I mean,
I'm just asking a simple question, not one big deal, but I just asked the board of selectmen to clarify which is legal
Right,
going forward, so Derek knows and the planning board knows.
right. That's very sensible.
and so we can, correct me if I'm wrong for the warrant, Christine, we can take this section B out of this, correct?
suppose you could, sure.
And still
Or
move
you could
forward.
just table the entire
I would,
section if it's clearer.
and that we can discuss, we have business item number 1 is approval of the special town meeting.
Yeah.
We can
If
talk
I
about
could,
it more then.
Right.
if I could propose that at least the changes in A are done, the paragraph A, because there are typos and wrong words and that sort of thing. I mean, it's not the end of the world, I guess, but
I'm sorry, can you say it one more time, darling?
I was hoping that at least paragraph A would be changed as it is, and you can leave B out if you wanna wait. I mean, they're typos, and
Okay, we can consider that when we consider the approval of the special town meeting warrant, if that's okay with other members of the board.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I think the stuff that's on here, the other A and 2 seems sufficiently, fine to change.
There's nothing different on 2, right, other than striking that?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
right.
Okay.
And those are just issues that we found when we were looking at it in the first place.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm so new at this. I just finished the
I'm
seminar.
not sorry.
I learned
I'm
a lot,
glad you're
but I
here.
didn't learn the answer to this question. I'm unsure about the chain of command. And that's what seems to be involved here. Is the planning board an agency under the Board of Selectmen who dictates what they do? Or, in other words, who presented these changes? That's what I'm confused about.
The planning board presents them as a proposal to the Board of Selectmen. I mean, the select board. The select board then decides whether or not there is going to be an article on the warrant and whether or not it's going to be recommended. Then the special town meeting decides whether or not anything is going to be passed. Nothing happens until the town meeting says that it happens, or doesn't. So,
And to
We're kind
piggyback
of-
on that, the planning board is appointed by the select board.
the select board in this form of town government acts in the place of the town meeting between town meetings. So we're kind of like the middle people. So, on to Article 7. Shall an ordinance entitled 2022 Amendments to the Land Use Ordinance regarding the table of land uses for retail businesses and consumer services establishments be enacted?
Change on the second page.
And this has been discussed at length by the select board. And Darlene, do you want to
Sure.
speak to those changes proposed?
Yeah, these next 4, I think, are based on the land use table. So, everything in town has to meet the land use table for the zone that it is in. If you look at page 11, just to explain it really quickly, is that there's a table, so HDS is high density shoreland, and then if you look below that on the bottom right, it says land use districts, and then you have HDS, RR, MHP, BC, UDP, and RP. Those are the different districts that we have in town. And then on the left-hand side, it will have the name of the use and the description of the use. So under retail businesses and consumer service establishments, you have like a commercial studio for arts and handcrafts. That if you go over to the right, it is P for permitted in the mobile home part, the business and commercial, and the urban development part. Does everybody follow how that works? Okay. So page 11, for this one, if you flip the page over, we made changes to 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Those are underneath retail business and consumer service establishments. So 8 existed, 9 did not. Under 8, it only read indoor places solely for eating and drinking. So we wanted to add indoor and outdoor because of the way that things are working now. People have indoor eating and outdoor eating, and it seemed not really a good idea to restrict it to just indoor eating. We struck the word solely because it seemed extra, didn't need to be there. So as far as that goes, we just added the 2 words. We didn't change the district to the right. It's still in the mobile home park and the business and commercial zone. Number 9 below it is almost a carbon copy of number 8. It reads indoor and outdoor places for eating and drinking with dancing and live entertainment permitted. That has been added into the urban development part only. If you look at number 8 above, 8 says no dancing or live entertainment permitted in the business and commercial. So if you're in the urban development part, there can be dancing, live entertainment, but not in the business and commercial zone. The board felt that that was prudent because, again, of all the businesses and commercial uses that we have peppered in amongst all of our residences. Whereas over in the urban development parks, on the other side of the highway, it's up against the rest of the Bath Industrial Park and a bunch of woods and that sort of thing. So any extra outdoor noise would not really be a bother to residences.
Don't anybody dance.
9, 10, and 11 were changed to 10, 11, and 12.
I mean, no dancing.
I know, and honestly, I think we've decided to relook at that sort of thing and maybe make some extra provisions so it would be allowed in business commercial if it had so many feet from a home or something. A lot of these uses, some of them are really have been in there a long time, and they're not up to what we do for uses these days, as you'll see with the other ones. So we were trying to do some gentle changes that help the town business-wise without hindering the residents in town.
We might be able to cover some of that concern with, if we can figure out how to make an enforceable noise ordinance.
Right, quiet hours would help with that in town. I like that idea. Yes, I agree.
Because really, some people just dance, let's face it. Is there any discussion on that first section? And the proposed changes for those proposed changes? Okay. Article 8. Shall an ordinance entitled 2022 Amendments to the Land Use Ordinance regarding the table of land uses for automotive service and open-air drive-in retail services / flea markets be enacted?
So this one, it's page 13. The only change is the addition of indoor and outdoor flea markets in the urban development park, number 8. It's in a strange category of automotive service and open-air drive-in retail services, so.
Is there any comment on that?
Is flea market defined in any particular manner?
No,
So
It's on my
dancing's not
list.
defined either.
it's on my list to do that, yes.
Is it a pole or whatever?
Huh? There are a lot of things that need to be added to the ordinances. We're working on all of that.
That's a good question for clarification. Article 9, shall an ordinance entitled 2022 Amendments to the Land Use Ordinance regarding the table of land uses for automotive service and open-air drive-in retail services / sports facilities be enacted? And you can see the change proposed down on the bottom of page 15, and that is the only one on that one.
Yeah, we just added the word indoor to outdoor sports facilities conducted for profit. That was the only change.
Any comment on that? And Article 10, shall an ordinance entitled 2022 Amendments to the Land Use Ordinance regarding the table of land uses for industrial, wholesale, and transportation uses be enacted. And this one was discussed at length at a select board meeting. And generally, this was decided to be an important possibility for the future. That's on page 17, number 3.
Yeah, number 3, it reads now, bottling of beverages only, and there was quite a bit of debate if that meant actually manufacturing what you were bottling, or just bottling. So to clarify, so there was no confusion or misinterpretation, we added the word manufacturing, and so you weren't restricted just to bottling something that's brought in on a truck.
Any comments?
It was a very spirited conversation on that.
So I guess I have one question for David. You made a comment, and I certainly wasn't in this position back in 2009 when the initial plans were pulled together. Was there a town meeting that approved those plans
Certainly.
Did
as
it,
they stand today?
did it approve the plans, or did it approve the sale of?
We had to approve everything that was, what the wind farm came forth in the original place.
2009.
Right, but it didn't, like,
It did reference law, I'm sure it did reference ordinance and stuff like that, but we had,
no,
to pass the whole plan
yeah.
at the town meeting.
I mean, it's.
So I guess the question that comes down to where I think the confusion lies is on the plans, in each of those plans that were sold for Wing Farm, has building lots established on them. So that's really where the question, I think, is coming in as to how it sets up the building area acceptable on the plan. It's spelled out specifically on the plan for square footage of building lot based upon the acreage.
Okay.
So is that, the question is that accepted as part of what was presented to the town as a package?
Well, that's part of what we need to find.
I can't recall the exact word, but I know the overall plan was
As
passed at the
presented.
town meeting, as presented. And most of this was driven by federal guidelines.
Exactly.
And
Has the EDC signed off on everything?
I mean, everything, it came out all the way down, federal contributed to the funding of it, the state and the town.
May I approach with this just for a second?
Oh, the blessed park.
So there's just a couple things on here, if this is all right.
These are the all beverages from the area.
Right?
2009.
Okay, we
And
have
the spillers.
oodles of copies of that.
Yes.
Yeah, that was good, 40 gazillion of them.
So here's the EDA number,
Yeah.
the award from the federal government. This is how this is presented to the town of West Bath. This is an actual copy of one of your original plans.
Right,
You have the Pamela here, Pamela Heil,
yeah.
from the town of West Bath. You have the West Bath Code Enforcement Officer on here. And then every other town that's included, Bath, obviously, and then all of the work, all the title work, all of the information that's here, okay?
Yeah,
And then if you go over here, agenda, permit, town of West Bath, final subdivision approval plan, approved.
yeah.
I mean, it just, again and again, everything, there's nothing here that is unfinished. And one of the conversations that we're having to talk about with
Kathy, can you
Current.
just make sure the recorder isn't under there?
It is.
Thank you.
So I think one of the things that we're having a conversation about is, and Darlene, you could elaborate on this, but your current code right now is calling for no more than business, commercial is what, 40%?
It's 40%, and you can get a waiver to
And you can get a waiver.
60% from the planning board, yes.
Right. Obviously, we'd like not to have to get a waiver every single time
Right.
that we want to do what is on the plans. That's the gist of why we're here. really. Or not why we're here, the other reasons why we're here. But that is, I think, helping to that language. Because currently, right now, on lot 7, which we are developing as we speak, this envelope here is over the 40%. And I'm not sure if it was quite over the 60%, but it was over the 40%. And the board was struggling with that because this isn't the standard for the town. So I'm not sure how it didn't happen, but here
But
it
this
is.
is how, the problem is, this is how it was sold to him as a
Yes.
package, so
Yeah,
he's,
right.
Usually a building envelope on an engineering plan like that means that you cannot go outside it. It does not mean that you can go right to the edge of it. It's usually that you cannot go outside of that envelope towards your property line
there were
because of
no-
other
there were no
restraints.
differences between what this was presented and approved at town meeting, and there were no changes made in the sale.
That's correct.
Right.
This is how the town presented it. This is from the town's broker. This is what we purchased. If you read about it, it talks about how it's fully approved, 9-lot subdivision. If you go further into that, they actually have a photocopy of this page. One more page, I think, if you go one page deeper for me, please. There, right there. That is a photocopy of this particular plan.
Those plans were at town meeting.
Certainly, they had to be.
What year was that, Derek?
April 31st of 2009 is what the plan
Yeah.
is stamped.
August.
In relation to
I'm sorry,
the-
August 31st.
In relation to the adoption of the current land use ordinance?
Well, so I think, what we're trying to, I think, resolve collectively, so that he can just keep moving forward and not having to go through this, is the determination of what he was sold compared to what the
I
ordinance
don't
means.
disagree with you, but I want, again, I don't want him to keep coming back here.
No,
every
nor do
couple
I.
of months. So
I
if
agree.
they get our attorneys involved and get her legal advice, you're not coming back every time you
I
want.
He
would
doesn't
love
want
that.
to, he doesn't want to do
I
that
don't
either.
want to do that either, and thank you for,
But we
you can have a
can't
copy of that if you
do
like. I
that
have
if
copies.
we just
Get 'em
hurry.
on. So, how does the town attorney, make a decision if she doesn't have any of this
Oh,
information?
she's gonna need all the information.
Yeah, where's she gonna get that from, or how does that happen?
We have from the town
Okay.
office.
Okay.
See, we have several iterations of a plan at the town office.
Okay.
I had no way of knowing which version was the correct one.
Right.
It's the
So
approved
it's
design
helpful to know the date and know that we're looking at the right thing. So that we can send her what she needs.
And,
If that's the case, then this is enough information for her.
Yeah.
Because it's approved.
Yes.
It's on the plan that it's
and
approved.
I'm not trying to be bossy or mean, but again, if we can include Christine in these discussions, she's gonna be very, very helpful in getting you what you need and moving you along the process.
We would love that. We're all for it. We're 100% for it. We'd like to put it behind us ourselves.
Absolutely, because I feel like you're here as much as I know.
He feels that way too.
Yes.
And I'd like
It's hard
to,
to not have any history with this, that
Well,
none of us have had, David's the only one who really has a recollection of what may have happened, and the rest of us were not, you
I
were on
signed
the
this
committee.
But it's not, this is, the end result,
Right.
when we get there, is to have it officially, I'll say, put into record at the town,
It is in record.
but it's not, because it's not stipulated on his building statutes on things, that we need to establish what the parameters are, what are accepted. He believes it's in record too, we just need to make it official, I guess is the best way to put it.
If it says one thing and he's still gonna go before the planning board,
There's
is that?
a loophole somewhere that needs to be fixed.
no, any development has to go before the planning board, even if there is a subdivision like that that's been approved. The subdivision was approved as a subdivision from the town. The subdivision and the stormwater approval was done by the state. But when those lots are developed, they still need to come in to say, this is what I'm putting it here, there's a
We're not
dumpster,
talking about
whatever.
the building, we're
So
talking
right,
about the
they
building
have to.
square footage,
Right.
the lot size,
Difference.
there's a huge,
Correct.
he's planning on any project that comes forward, he's trying to set a
Right.
standard on what's accepted
Agreed.
for the square footage and never come back and talk about it again.
And what we can do is make the warrant reflect the discussions for this evening, and to revisit this at a time when our attorney will have an opportunity to review the records as they are, to see what the difference is between the ordinances as they read in 2009 and now, and look at all that in a very sensible and thorough manner, so that we're not left holding a variety of interesting legal bags.
And I'd like to respectfully request that I be included in that, or at least someone from the planning board, with that discussion with Sally, so that we're getting it
That will be
firsthand.
included going forward.
That would be great.
I would suspect that all of those discussions would be, we would all be informed of what happens at what time, because this is public business. Is there any other comment? Yes,
I have
Gary.
a comment. So my recollection of this special March town meeting was to put into ordinance to allow Derek and Kathleen to proceed with plans. By striking this one change, is that going to influence your ability to proceed with your plans? And if it does, why are we foregoing the expense of a special town meeting if we can't achieve what the original goals were for the special town meeting?
Because the special town meeting wasn't just to get Mr. Desick and Kathleen to move along. It was to try to clean up and get some of these ordinances that Darlene has been working so hard on. It wasn't any one thing.
And there are other elements that pertain to his build-out that help him move forward with business proposals that aren't necessarily tied specifically to the building square footage. I mean, he, you know, we need to figure out if those plans hold factual, and if that's granted, the language here is irrelevant.
But we're talking about a 2-month delay.
No, if Sally approves those plans as they stand,
No, I'm saying the
accepts
special
those
town
plans.
meeting is accelerating these ordinance changes by 2 months.
well, all these ordinance changes that, other than that one paragraph, as far as that's what I think we're gonna remove tonight. But in theory, if Sally approves his understanding of how he purchased this, that all of those building lots are grandfathered or granted, or whatever the proper terminology is for that, then this language isn't necessary because he already has the approval in the initial purchase of the plans.
So therefore, the special town meeting isn't necessary.
No, there's still changes there.
I'm just looking at the accrued cost of the special town meeting.
There's still changes that he's getting.
Minimal
There's still
cost.
elements that play into what he's trying to do in the development park. It's not that one piece.
And the 2 months will negate your ability to proceed?
So my understanding is we've been building off of these plans thus far, building them to the spec that's on these plans. We have 2 lots in there right now, so I assume with that being the way it is and no ordinance changing, that the board will have to do the same thing for the next lot.
The board will do what Sally, legal counsel, deems is correct. And
No,
to
but-
be clear, striking that out of there to expand it to 75% means that if Sally deems that he has to stick to the 40 to 60%, he'll have to stick to the 40 to 60%, so hopefully that'll work.
It's being
Well, so-
stricken until we review it. It's
Right.
going in May,
Mhm.
potentially regardless, if the select board says it should. It's what he has in his hand for his personal agenda, if Sally approves it, and what he purchased from the town, for his structure. I know there's other urban development out there, but for his engagement, if Sally approves as those plans are presented, he can proceed with not having to ask about the building development lot.
And if she doesn't,
We'll see what happens.
And if
Okay.
she does, His plans may pertain to him, and legally he may be able to do them, but do you want everybody else in Wing Park doing the same thing? If you say there's other people in there other than him.
There's other people in the urban development zone.
Yes.
Right, so do we,
Park.
you know, so
So
The
some
change
things
was
may
for
not
the-
apply to him, that may apply to the rest of us.
to new opportunity as well.
The change was to expand it so that businesses could develop in that entire urban development park in more of an industrial manner, which is what it was made for. You cannot develop a lot for industrial saying that they can only use 40 to 60%. It's just silly.
We're not
It's
saying
just
no,
not,
we're saying not
you know.
today.
So that's
You're saying
why we
need
wanted to
follow the
expand it.
process.
Yeah, it's not dead, it's just not today.
That's fine.
Is there a motion here somewhere?
Well, not yet, we're not in the public meeting
We're not,
yet.
we're in
the review of the-
We're in the hearing process.
We're still in the hearing process, so.
I would like to note that, all the advertisements stated to contact town hall or the town clerk with questions or concerns. The only concern I received was asking if any of these changes impacted the shoreland for shellfish harvesting. So I said no, and there were no other issues.
That's good to know, thank you. Are there any last comments, dear public? Yes?
Another question, I'm
Sure.
sorry. So these changes were sent out with a notice for a public hearing. 2 nights, tonight, and then another one, and then finally a meeting.
Yes.
A special meeting. And they were sent out by the planning board.
No,
No.
By the town.
no. The planning board doesn't send out notices. It was probably from the town.
Yeah, the select board moves forward with the ordinance changes, so it was advertised by the town. The select board's required to hold a public hearing, and the planning board has a public hearing, and then town meeting is where, the town, as a body, votes on whether or not to approve the changes.
So
Does that answer your question?
But the select board hadn't seen these before tonight.
We received it via email, we didn't discuss them.
They
There was
saw
one
all but
change that
one.
had not been presented to the
Well,
select
I
board.
would just like to point out that you cannot assume that just because an email was sent, everybody saw it.
Right.
It does not happen. People miss emails, including me. I didn't ever see this.
It was in your packets for the last meeting, but it wasn't discussed in the same way that the other ones were
Right.
discussed.
So, what was the question, I'm sorry?
At all.
Point of clarification.
So, yeah, just the question is, it didn't come from the planning board, it came from the selectmen, from the select persons, I suppose.
Municipal officers is now the
Municipal
correct
officers.
term.
I like that.
Uh-huh.
Ordinance changes are recommended by the planning board to the select board, who then makes the determination of whether or not to move forward. And then they advertise it and hold the public hearings.
So let me ask a question for a
I don't
procedural
think, Suzanne, I don't think he's done yet,
Yes,
because he's got a good point.
Oh, I'm gonna expand upon that, though.
Well, then-
I think it's
Let
good.
him ask his
Go ahead.
question, please.
Okay,
No, do you have more?
You
I don't wanna
have the
interrupt.
floor.
oh, well, the question is, that packet
Yes,
was noticed to whomever got it,
yes.
and this meeting is to consider it. How does this meeting get to say to the next meeting, you can't consider that paragraph? We've taken it out.
Oh,
Or how can
okay.
the municipal officers tell the planning board, we don't like your paragraph, we're taking it out? That's all I'm asking.
It's because the select board determines what appears on the warrant for the special town meeting. It's their jurisdiction to decide what moves forward and what does not.
Okay.
So we can pull an item tonight. Let's say everyone in this room was against one of these items.
Yeah,
We would just pull it from the warrant.
and the people at the next meeting wouldn't get to talk about it at all?
Right. It's already been, I'll say, revoked from the,
Tonight and the next meeting are just information sessions. They're not decision-making sessions. They're
Well, there
just,
are if you're pulling a paragraph from.
Well,
for the
proposal
select
that's
board.
been made
the
public.
board can sit there and decide, they're gonna have a select board meeting
Right after this.
right after this, and they can officially decide to pull it out if they think it's appropriate.
But
So right now, there's nothing official about what's been said, it's all an information discussion.
well, except that you sent out a notice, there were gonna be 2 meetings.
But it's information, we can still talk about it.
It's a hearing.
It's just to learn.
Yeah, I think,
Right.
And then,
That's the point.
and then
It's
Darlene will
just to
have
learn.
yours, right?
Yeah, so at the hearing that the planning board will have next week, I will talk about all of them, and when we get to that one, I will say at the last hearing, the selectmen decided to pull that from the warrant. Does anyone have any comments about it? But it will not be on the warrant, because they've decided to pull it.
So let me,
So we won't ignore it, I'll talk about it and then just say they pulled it from the warrant.
so let me ask a procedural question here. We don't have to sign the warrant tonight, is that correct, from a timing
You'll
perspective?
need to approve the warrant, you won't necessarily have to sign it.
It has to be approved tonight? Or can it be approved at another
It
time?
can be approved at another time.
So if this is something that maybe is this something that you wanna try and talk about tonight, and then maybe put it in the warrant to move forward, or do you wanna?
Well, it's gonna be talked about, it's on the
It's on-
agenda.
Give me
It's
one
on the
second.
agenda for the meeting.
But I'm asking the board, is this something that you'd like to consider adding to a definitive tonight? And
We
then
don't
signing?
know, we don't know till we have the discussion. And that's on business item number 1.
At the next meeting? I mean, that's what I'm saying, yes.
This is not part of the hearing, this is not part of, that's not part of the hearing.
So we may, okay. Never mind.
If there's no further comment from the public on these matters, I would declare this hearing closed. Tune in again for the planning board hearing if you wish to pursue this.
Darlene, can you just say again when your planning board meeting is?
The 23rd, I think?
Tuesday?
Tuesday, the 22nd, 6 o'clock,
Yep, she's
at
got
this
it.
very fire hall.
Tuesday, the 22nd at 6 o'clock here.
I'm gonna stop the recording so that we can have a clean one for the select board meeting.
Yes, thank you. And perhaps
Thank
take
you.
a personal needs break.